Good afternoon, folks. It's Mr. Baz again, and so today this one's Let's Talk. I think I found it. I think I figured it out. I truly think I figured out what was the spur for the transgender movement. Yeah, and it's gonna be a controversial point. There's gonna be people who don't want to hear it and who are not gonna like hearing it. You're gonna have folks who disagree. You're free to, but I think I'm onto it. I think I figured it out. So there was a time, as far as I can only remember, as far back as the '90s, right? So I can't speak on anything that happened in the '80s, anything that happened in the '70s. I can't speak on times when I was not around. I can only speak on what I remember. And in the '90s, I can't remember there being as many gay bashings as there were apparently beforehand, right? Not to say that they were not intolerant and ignorant people, they existed, but they were also dealt with accordingly. The law didn't okay we weren't archaic where we see a man get beat for being gay and we're just like, that's okay. That wasn't happening. So into the '90s, you end up with a show like Will and Grace. Will and Grace was I don't know, did Will and Grace start in the '90s or the 2000s, early 2000s? Either way, Will and Grace, fantastic show, one of my favorite shows. Karen, Jack, all of them, they are hilarious. If you could get me a DVD set and I get me if there's any DVD players that still exist, I will sit down and watch it with you. Um, there was a time when the certain things just the things that are being made to be angry about, like things that are finding contention today, things that people complaining about today, they didn't really like they were phasing out back when I was, at least when I was a kid, teenager, people weren't concerned with them. For instance, now we're not we folks are getting upset about certain hires for movies like the black girl for the Little Mermaid or Rachel Zegler for Snow White, right? Now, the only reason why people are getting upset about these things today is because of the woke DI part of it. You know what? Rachel Zegler didn't really help herself in that regard either. She kind of shot herself in the foot because the girl who played Little Mermaid, she was catching some backlash too, but I don't remember her saying anything negative about the source material or shitting on the product and the company that wrote it. You know what I mean? So she didn't like there was a flame of anger there, but she didn't give it more gas, whereas Rachel did. She inflamed her own issue. People were already not happy with her, and then you're gonna bash the source material. So there was that. However, back in what was it? Was it the '90s when Brandy played as Cinderella in that musical, that live action musical, and no one gave a shit. I don't remember anyone complaining about Cinderella being played by a black woman. No one seemed to care. At that point in time, there was no we didn't really look at these things for that reason. Like we weren't looking at a person saying you were only hired because you were black. We were looking at Brandy is a good voice. She did a phenomenal job. It's that simple. You know what I mean? Now, could she have taken her own personal flack that I don't know about as a person? Possibly. But the surrounding people, the community I grew up in, as far as I remember, no one had a problem with it. Furthermore, if you look at the rest of the cast for that Cinderella movie, her stepmom was a white woman who had two daughters. One was a black girl, the other was a white girl. Then you have the prince, who was played by an Asian man. His mother's played by Whoopi Goldberg, and his father is a white guy. No one questioned any of it. No one was asking how does a black woman and a white man make an Asian baby. Like, no, we just let it happen, right? Same thing with Will and Grace. No one gave a shit. The only reason why people care now is because the things were shoved in our faces. But where it really, really popped off, where it comes to the transgender part of it, there's levels to it. There's build up towards it, right? So one of those things, and no one, not when I build some of the layers, I'm not saying each individual part is at fault. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this was wrong for happening, this was wrong for happening, this was wrong for happening. How I feel about each situation in the personally doesn't matter. But I do think they kind of helped along to building to where we are now. So you start with, I look at my childhood. Most of our cartoons and whatnot were, were talking animals, superhero shit, and superheroes were always wearing leather tights and underwears outside their pants and whatnot, like Superman. I don't know what that's about. Big bulky hulky guys, and like our childhood was influenced by a certain picture of people, right? So let's take that and pin to the wall. The Disney characters, the superheroes, the talking animals, the SWAT cats, the Thundercats, the shark, let's just pin them to a wall for now, right? And then we move forward, and we see racial tension here and there, but it really wasn't what it was being made out to be. Internet made the racial tensions seem a lot crazier than they were. So you have situations like, unfortunately, the Trayvon Martin with George Zimmerman. You have the Sandra Bland, still kind of an ugly situation. You have the Freddie Grays, the Eric Garners. You had a lot of really, really unfortunate, horrible situations that weren't properly handled. And in retrospect, I can still see where your BLM movements took a root from there. Where nothing's properly being done for how certain situations were handled, and it seems like some people are being neglected. So I get it. I get where the BLM started to take its rise, right? But in the process of BLM taking its rise, and this happened during the Obama administration, people want to blame Trump for racism, but it wasn't Trump. It was under the Obama administration that these things happened. I think Obama should have handled those things better as well. George Zimmerman getting off should never have happened. Like the Sandra Bland situation should never have happened. I don't think the proper amount of anger was met for those situations, and so those situations were allowed to fester, be made to seem as though they were a lot more common and than they really were. It made it seem as though the Sandra Blands were happening everywhere. Once you put something on the media, for whatever reason, now the media puts extremes on it. News puts the spotlight on extreme situations. That's where they get their hits from, and people were clamoring to those extremes. And so you get a cop situation, or you get a cop shooting an innocent or unarmed person. That might be one video, but then people take that one video and assume every cop is like that. So now you create these narratives. All cops are bad. Yeah, not all cops are. There are asshole cops. There are cops who don't deserve their badge. There are cops who should know the law before they start pulling people over and inciting things and whatnot. If you are quick to pull out your gun and want to kill your own civilians, you probably shouldn't be around a gun or be around your civilians. There's probably something sick in your own head. I will still stand on that. But unfortunately, there was blowback in that, and there's racial blowback in that. The white man took the racial blowback in it. Now, there are white people, now, then, even before, who are racist, who are ignorant. Then there are those who are not. You have those who really go out of their way to not be racist, not be ignorant, not be intolerant. And then you have those in between who are just ignorant in their own way, or just might be a little off. Like, I have an uncle from my mother's side, so he's a white guy. Now, he knows my father's black. But he don't know where in Caribbean my father's from. So I remember wearing a shirt, say, "We be jamming," and we went to the the Poconos in Pennsylvania. I was wearing this "We be jamming" shirt. My uncle makes a comment, "We be Jamaican." I'm like, "What?" It says, "We be jamming." He says, "Nah, but your father's Jamaican." No, he's not. But he's from the Caribbean, right? Yeah. So he's Jamaican. No. Like, there's more islands in the Caribbean than just Jamaica. Like, someone would see that as that's a microaggression, that's racism. It really wasn't. The guy was just ignorant. Or naive. He didn't realize there was more islands in the Caribbean than just Jamaica. It's silly, it's dumb, but it happens. Can I sit back and be mad at him for that and say, "Oh, you're a racist white guy because you picked the wrong country for my father"? Whatever. What I will say was odd about him was that he was like, he was like an Eminem. He was a white boy that thought he was black. But can I say he thought he was black? He didn't grow up around black people. He grew up around mostly Spanish kids who got a lot of their influence from the hip hop culture and community. And so he got his influence from the hip hop culture and community because there weren't many white boys around him to be friends with. It kind of makes sense. Similarly to how Eminem turned into what he is if he grew up in fucking Detroit. If you're hood, you're hood. It is what it is, right? Is that uncle of mine hood? No. And when I called him out for being a wannabe black boy, he did not like that. That was a personal button. That was a trigger for him, and he did not like that. So I think he's still a wannabe black boy, but whatever. But those are kind of like the in-betweens that he might actually be racist. I don't know. I'm not saying he is. He might actually. But those are the in-betweens. He's trying to portray something. He's trying to portray an image, but whatever. Then you have your actual racist racists who just don't like him. They don't like anything black. They don't like anything or whatever. A racist person is someone who holds negative prejudice or sees other races or ethnicities as below theirs. You know? When it came to how this transitions into things today, and this is all the building blocks, yeah? Your wokeism, the woke ideology that ended up springing up under, I'm not blaming Obama for this, I'm just give people a timeline of when this happened, because it happened under the Obama administration. Again, not blaming him, just happened under his term. So the woke ideology. Now, the early term woke did not spring under his administration. The early term woke goes back to back when there were colored fountains and white fountains. Like it was if I'm not mistaken, it was sort of a saying or sort of like a warning for black people: beware of what neighborhoods you drive around, and stay alert and stay awake when you're driving around at night. I get it. What it turned into the Obama administration under that time was something else, and it was not so much of be wary of the KKK that might be driving up behind you, but be wary of keep in mind your history. Don't forget your history. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget what history the white man apparently tries to steal from you. And this woke ideology spread not just from black people. It wasn't just a black thing, and it becoming a Spanish thing and an Asian thing, and anyone that was not a white man. And so the straight white man became the bad guy. Straight white man became the demon. Straight white man became the enemy. Everything that has something to do with the straight white man has to be wrong because it's the straight white man who did all this. So he's the oppressor, he's the man, he's the bad guy. Yeah? You get a movie. First it was a movie, Dear White People. Apparently based off of something that happened in college. I wasn't at that college, can't say if it did. I'm just rolling with it. It was an interesting movie. Then they made a show, a Netflix series, and that went for 4 seasons. And shows like that was what took that woke ideology and they trended it to what it is now. Now, even in that, you had, for instance, Sam's boyfriend, the white one, right? I don't think he was racist. Obviously, he wasn't racist enough that he's enjoying it and falling in love with a black girl, right? Or a racist white man falls in love with a black girl if he hates black women so much. But regardless of how much he tried to make it clear to all those around him that he was not racist, even when he made the smallest slights, the microaggressions, pearl clutching. See, Sam, he's racist. You gotta watch out for that boy, Sam. I'm telling you. You know what I mean? That is that's the pill that a lot of white people have to swallow, is that a lot of jokes will be made about white people and they don't get to say shit about it. But white people can't make the jokes back, otherwise they're called racist. If they're put on stage, given a microphone and an audience, they can make the jokes, no one cares. But in just general conversation, white people apparently are not allowed to have, if you're a straight white man, you're not allowed to have an opinion. Those are apparently your defining ones, right? Straight white man. There's probably a variation. Like if you strip off the man part of it and just put a woman part of it, and she makes the same statements, it's still probably gonna be pearl clutching all over. Karen was being racist, whatever. does happen. Um, so imagine you do all you can to prove that you are not one of them. You are not this, that you're not that racist white man. You're not that, and they're still not believing you. Still, how do you then break through to your fellow black man and Spanish person who you will never be able to understand them because you're part of the oppressor group and they're part of the oppressed group? How can you appeal to them and make sure you can be understand that let them? How can you make friends with them and never be grouped with the racist white guy? Transgenderism. So something happens. I don't know if it happened. If I could blame COVID for it. I think COVID was a big catalyst for it because things were popping online, right? So now, while in the background all that woke shit happening, so that's what's happening in the foreview, right? That's what everyone is. That's what the world is watching. This is what we mostly can see. What people forget about is all the shit that happens here on this little internet thing. All those little chat rooms and all those little games and all those little communities and social circles that your kids were part of. Whether it was AIM, AOL, Skype, Discord, all the little chat technologies, all the little circles or whatever. And then in them, you had communities, you had art communities, you had gaming communities, you had music communities, you had communities of people who like different things. DeviantArt was one of them great ones. DeviantArt was a great art community, people of all different types of art. Drawing, sculpting, photography, all sorts of shit. And within it, you have things like furry art. Now, it shouldn't be surprising. Remember that thing about Disney and all that we pinned to the wall earlier? Well, now we're taking that shit down. Because Disney had just as much to do with the furry shit as anyone else. Maybe not intentionally. What I'm saying doesn't suggest that Disney or the producers of any Disney show, movie, or whatever, that it wasn't their intention to eventually make an adult version of, Minnie Mouse getting railed or the Lion King characters going at it. That's not what I'm saying. But you normalize for kids talking animals. You normalize for kids animal civilizations. Yes, there is knowing this is fiction and we're in reality. Just like I know, playing Mortal Kombat, that I wasn't really Scorpion. That I cannot throw a harpoon from my hand and get over here to a person. I mean, there's probably techniques to do so, but it doesn't mean I'm going to go out and do so. You know what I mean? Like, I could differentiate fiction from reality. Nevertheless, you invited us to this fiction realm of things. And you get shit like Pokemon. They ain't mean to do it either. First generation Pokemon had a daycare center. When I say first generation, I mean for the Game Boy, you had red, blue, yellow, and you had a daycare center. You drop your Pokemon off, and you run around, do your shit, and when you come back, daycare center had leveled your Pokemon up for you, depending on how far you were gone. I never used it in the first version, just because I like to be in control of my Pokemon. Yes, I'm a nerd. Come the second generation, Silver, Gold, and Crystal, daycare center is now on Route 34, and you could now store 2 Pokemon there. And if they're male and female, and they like each other, sometimes they made an egg. You had a baby Pokemon. And that was part of the mechanic, because some Pokemon can only be achieved through hatching the egg and getting the young version of it. So like there was a Pokemon that came before Pikachu, which they implemented in the second generation. But in order to get that Pokemon before Pikachu, you had to have Pikachu have a baby, and then there was an egg, and the egg hatched, and there's the smaller version of Pikachu. Well, and you had Pokemon like Ditto. Ditto was used to mate, because Ditto was a transforming character that would mimic any Pokemon's like appearance. And so if you want to mate 2 Pokemon, you get a certain particular Pokemon, and you only had, like, say you had a Growlithe and you want to get a second Growlithe, but you didn't have a second Growlithe to mate it with, you might have mated it just with a Ditto, and Ditto would have assumed the Growlithe form, and you get a Growlithe egg. And that went either gender, male, if it was a male Growlithe or a female Growlithe, you put it with the Ditto, whatever. That led to a whole heap of memes early on. So memes started way back during the AOL days and MySpace days. All that memes started way back. 4chan. Now, that's where Rule 34 was born. Rule 34 is that anything that can be sexualized will be sexualized. A chair, a fence post, a tree, this window behind me, if it can be sexualized, it will be sexualized. And that includes cartoons, Pokemon, anime, anything. Yeah? Online worlds, your gaming communities, your chat communities, there's things in those worlds called roleplay. Some of it is just straight up text. Some of it they include voice because people like talk to each other and do all that shit. Some of it is virtual worlds roleplay, and that gives them a little bit more feel for it because they get to see things versus just typing it out. But nevertheless, a fantasy is involved. People are creating characters and they're playing out as these characters in these fantasy worlds. And this was going on at least as far back as 2004, probably before that. But when I got involved with online roleplay, and this is how I know about it, was in 2004 and going to 2005. Um, I joined the furry. I didn't really join the furry community. I liked the idea of warrior cats. Disney kid, right? So I drew warrior animals, and I like being in control of my own characters. So I drew all my shit, learned it up, but I never really fit in with the furry community because I also drew a lot of females, and at that time the furry community was mostly gay guys who did not like seeing naked women. And for whatever reason, whenever I drew female characters, my viewers and my watchers, people who subscribe to my pages, my shit would drop. Every single female, it would just drop. So I realized early on that I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them. I draw the shit. I think some of the stuff is cool, but I'm not one of them. I'm not going to any conventions. I'm not putting on any fursuits. I'm not that. But there are in those groups. I did come across the early stages of what is today's transgenderism. It's all gonna come full circle. Don't worry. Take a site like. Y'all ever heard of Bad Dragon? For y'all who be watching them OF models and shit, them girls who be playing with themselves on camera, you probably seen some bad dragon toys. It's those animal looking schlong dildo toys. Yeah. So Bad Dragon is a company that started off drawing furry porn on what's called Furfinity. Furfinity is like a DeviantArt, but it's for predominantly furry stuff. Bad Dragon started there, and then they started making Bad Dragon toys, as you can imagine. Well, excuse me, they also have a website of their own called F-List. F-List is a site for people who do online roleplay, and they share artwork, and they share stories and whatnot. And they're open to all types of shit. It's F-List literally stands for fetish list, and it's a list of fetishes that people get into. Wild shit, from situations of all the way through to underage shit to smegma to essays to any topic, any plot, any angle, any gimmick, anything that could be seen as fetish will be used and implemented. And these things are popular in these communities. The vanilla stuff, the regular romance stories, just regular story-driven stories with regular plots of conflict, drama, action, adventure, horror, suspense. Those people don't even give a shit about any of that stuff no more. All they want to get into is the gimmicks and the adult material of kink and sex or whatever. So they have a chat site, they have chat rooms, and they just post up all their stuff. They have their characters, and the characters are separated by colors. Yeah, so when you sign up and you make a character, you go into the chat room, you start typing, whatever your character's gender is, that's the color that you're gonna get. So girls are pink, boys are blue, what's called cunt boys are green, transgender is orange, hermaphrodites are purple, and then females are lavender. So there's different categories, yeah? And each of them has its own they have their own little sub-fetish and kinks and all that, and their own groups and niches that they gravitate towards and whatnot. The pinks are the highest valued. Why? Because they're females. And the blues are the ones that kind of get chucked aside. So a lot of times, half of the pinks are actually guys who are just trying to portray females because it's the only way they can get RP. even if it means who they end up role playing with are just other guys playing as other girls and whatever. Don't care. It was in 2017 where I had my first incident when it came to the whole transgender shit, because I never had any incident with it. I may not agree with your hermaphrodite or she-male or any of that character. I may not get into it, but I didn't really hate it. But a conversation came up about transitioning, and I said something along the lines of men can never be women. It's really insulting. It should be insulting to suggest that they can't understand what a woman goes through. For that, I was banned. I got in trouble and I was banned. That was 2017. Yeah. Fast forward to COVID. And what happened during COVID? Lockdown. Everyone's stuck inside. There's no going out no more. Everyone's stuck to their computers, their video games. Everyone's doing everything online. All their social interaction, all their communities, everything's done online. And then online is where you find all these little fantasy worlds of all these fiction novels and all this other random shit. And I think somewhere along the way, of a mixture, the cocktail of the woke ideologies, the fan fiction, being stuck in your house, and just needing the online community, and that I think what blossomed is then your transgender. It's really weird how I watch things evolve in the roleplay community, the online roleplay community, and then how they were evolving in there ended up being reflected in the real world. We thought the whole she-male hermaphrodite thing was going to trend out and it was going to fade and it was going to be gone, and it didn't. It got bigger and crazier, and the same thing ended up happening with online, with the real world and the transgenderisms. So what am I getting to? I think white guilt from the woke ideologies and being stuck online and the falling into the fantasies of online worlds, online communities, telling each other that you could identify as anything you want to be. And I think somewhere in that, people start to believe the shit. They start to believe their lies. They start to really think that this shit was the way to go. And somewhere in that, did white people realize if they identify as something else, say for instance, if a man is suddenly now bisexual, or if he identifies as a woman and he's a white guy, he's no longer a part of the oppressed group. He's now oppressor group. He's now part of the oppressed group, right? Because now he's no longer the straight white guy if he's identifying as a woman, and now he's lesbian, or if he's even a bisexual man. I think this is what happened. I don't know if, I'm not suggesting that they actively decided this is what we're going to do. I think it was a psychological. I think people got tired of being called racist. You get people like my mother, for instance, who my mother's a white woman, but my sister, she's older than me by 5 years, and her father's Puerto Rican, my father's black. So while my mother will never understand what it's like for either my father or my sister's father to experience, what it's like to be a black person or a Spanish person, she still understands what it's like to deal with prejudice being thrown towards her kids. Because I had prejudice thrown towards me. I had racism thrown at me as a kid, and sometimes even as an adult. And she has dealt with it as well with my sister. Not to say that she hasn't dealt with prejudice towards her as being a white woman, but she can still somewhat more relate towards people of color struggle, since her kids are people of color. Now, I'm not suggesting she did this way she can relate. I don't think it was a decision as much as just she was a bigger woman and white guys were not into bigger women. But for the white women who don't have a black baby daddy or a Spanish baby daddy or kids that are of color or half, I think those are your liberal white women who decided, yeah, I'm gonna teach my kid this way and say my kid identifies as this, and then it'll make me part of this group to say I know what you're going through because my kid is this, right? That's accessorizing your kid. That's you're using your kid just to be part of the in group, and that's I think that's a big part of what's happening. Um, I'm not saying kids don't grow up and think and act the way they do, but at this level, at this magnitude, it's not because it's being normalized. It's because it's being trended. Because it's being taught to people. It's being taught to kids. Um, it makes Susan and Kelly look like they're open-minded and accepting if they if their son is dressing like the Pink Power Ranger. And I say that it's a white person thing because the majority of your people who are seen in these protests, the majority of pink hair crazies, your green hair crazies. I'm not saying you don't have black transgender people. I'm not saying you don't have Spanish transgender people. I'm not saying people of color don't have these their own transgender communities or whatever, or in the transgender individuals. But it's not as prevalent because black mothers, Spanish mothers, Indian mothers, Arab mothers, Asian mothers, they're not trying to have their little boy grow up and be a girl. You may have some that are a little bit more, okay, I may accept you if you say you're gay or bi, but for the most part, they don't want their son to grow up and be a girl. They truly don't. Even as accepting as they may be, they want their son to be a guy. They want their son to be a man. White people don't seem to have that same. White people are very passive. They're very conforming. You know, it, it it's the only thing that makes sense to me at this point. It really is. Like, you ever notice how when gay and flamboyant white guys talk, they emulate this they're it's this black woman character that comes out of them? Is it because they relate to the black woman's struggle? The oppressed and being struck down and standing up against? I don't think it is. I've watched a video about someone trying to explain why that is. I don't think it is. I think part of it is that white guilt. Is that you feel like now that you're this, you could now identify. You could put on this character and be something else. Because you can come out of the closet and not have to put on a whole identity and make your personality about your sexuality. You know what I mean? A basketball player, a football player, anyone, any straight guy or any straight seeming or any guyish guy could be open, and you just wouldn't know it just because he's regular. He didn't make his sexuality part of his personality. Whereas you have people who do exactly that, and I gotta do it if you're doing it just for a character, or if that's really who you are. Is this really who you want to be? This extraness character? It's not original anymore. But yeah, I'm blaming it on white guilt. I think that's exactly what it is. And what made me even more sure about it was I was having a couple of debates with a couple of folks, mostly in forums, chat rooms, and whatnot, and some of them were on Facebook. And in one of the debates, one of my arguments was that it's a little pedophilic to be introducing kids to these adult topics. They don't need to be worrying about these things. You're destroying a child's innocence. Who you are before before you ever had your first kiss, before you've ever gone down, before you ever had anything to do with any sexual act. Who you are before is a completely different person from who you are afterwards. So I think it's a little pedophilic. That was part of my argument. The person kept trying to turn around and say that I was a pedophile for being so concerned with what other people are doing with their kids or whatever. Because that conversation it didn't seem like I was being heard, I then pivoted and I said, well, I threw this one out there, and just as I expressed it to y'all, it was more of a wonder. And yes, I still think that it's pedophilic, but I do truly believe that white guilt plays a really big role in what happened and the transgenderism and the sudden boom of it. Well, when I played that argument, the man still tried to try to go back to the pedophilic topic. He didn't like the white guilt topic. That was the one he didn't want to address. And then I reiterated, like, I'm past that, whatever. I truly think this is what it is. It's white guilt, and this is why. And I laid it out. Yes, there's gays, there's bis, there's transgender, black people, Spanish people, and all that. But for the most part, the women of those cultures are not with it. You know what I mean? And you could call it religious, you could call it whatever, some kind of ignorance, intolerance. At the end of the day, a woman wants to see her boy grow up and be a man. It is what it is. And where I know what made me feel even more sure about this was watching as the first person I had this argument with, they no longer had anything to say back. They kind of just fizzled out and they quieted it up. They had nothing to say really. And then I tried it again with another person. I had one argument, but then I pivoted to something else, and they gave up. And so the next argument I had, I began it with my reasoning with that being the one, and days have gone by. The person hasn't said shit. That person could be ignoring me, but then so could the second and the third and the fourth. No one is wanting to debate that point. I'm wondering if it's just some truth to it. I'm wondering if maybe I might have figured it out. If it truly is white guilt, it kind of makes sense. That would mean white women who are transitioning their kids are in fact using their kids as accessories. You're propping your child up, making your child look a certain way, so that you could say that you're part of the crowd that knows what struggle is. You could say you know what it's like to be oppressed because your child is identified as such and such. When your child doesn't even know what these fucking things mean. You know what I mean? And the absurdity of it goes beyond just male and female or non-binary, because then your child could identify as a kitty, and suddenly a kitty is a fucking gender. You know what I mean? We're confusing words. What you're doing is you're trying to make a lifestyle, and you're calling it something else. It's not a gender identity, it's a lifestyle choice. You choose to meow in class, does it make your gender suddenly feline? Felines also have male and female. You know, like, this shit doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. But the more I look at it, I think it does hold water. I think I'm onto something. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm willing and open to having this debate with other people. I would really, really like if this video, met, even if it's not, hundreds and thousands of subscribers or viewers. I would like for at least a Joe Rogan or a Steven Crowder or someone who could at least give me a way to voice what I'm saying. Like, I know a lot more than I'm letting on in these videos. I'm holding on into a lot of information because I'm hoping that I could get, sit down with one of these gentlemen to really lay it all out for them and express exactly, my ins and outs, how I'm able to see the things I'm seeing. If anyone knows how to help get the word out, please do. If you have any thoughts or concerns, or if you have a debate, or if you have a point against me, or if you think I'm wrong for how I feel, you're more than welcome to leave it in the comments. And in the next video, I will definitely address your comment. I'll respond to it. I don't mind. Other than that, yeah. Until next time, folks. Y'all be well.